Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about what actually causes ADHD. Now, most of you are going to say it's dopamine deficiency, and you're not wrong, but you're also not 100% right. You can have two things actually that impacts the way your body uses dopamine. Yes, you can have a deficiency where you don't have enough of something, and you can have dysregulation where you may or may not have the right balance of things, but maybe they don't work the way they should work. So to make sure we understand this, I want to say just one blanket statement, which is that the body communicates through a game of telephone. One nerve cell communicates to another nerve cell to pass on information throughout the body. This is especially so in the brain. So really, it's just a process of exchanging signals from one place to another. And that's why you can have dysregulation or deficiency. So to highlight what this is, because I realize this could be really hard to understand, I want you to picture a hallway. Any hallway in your house, this hallway, whatever hallway you can imagine. Picture a hallway. In that hallway, there are two doors, a door A on one side and door B on the other side, and they're facing one another. In the middle of that hallway is a person. We'll talk about that person later, but they have an important job in this case. Both of the doors lead to, of course, you probably guessed it, two separate rooms. So you have room A connected to door A, room B connected to door B, and then this person in the hallway. Now, inside of room A, there is a person who is asleep. And this person has a set of keys that they need to do their part in order to help pass the information to the next person in room B. So room B, picture that door facing the door of room A, has a multitude of keyholes on it. You can think of it like a New York style door where it's like a line of things that have to be unlocked in order for you to get into room B and interact with the people on the other side to pass on the message. So I mentioned the body communicates through a system of telephone, or you're passing it from one entity to the next. So this is basically how the dopamine process works. You have your person in room A who has all of these keys, and their main job is to get those keys to the person in the hallway so that the person in the hallway can use those same keys to unlock all of the locks on the door for room B to pass on the message so that it can continue on. The body also communicates through electrical signals. We call these signals action potentials. So if you can imagine the person in room A is asleep and the action potential is an alarm, that alarm goes off, it wakes the individual up in room A, they figure out, I gotta do my job. They take this massive key ring of keys and they hand it to the person in the hallway. That person, again, goes and unlocks the door to room B, and the message can be passed on through them. In our example, the individual that's inside of the room asleep is the presynaptic neuron. This is the nerve that first received the message from another nerve somewhere along the way, and they need to just pass it on, which is their job. That's the same example, the keys themselves are actually the dopamine, the neurotransmitters. And the person standing in the hallway is a dopamine transporter. Their main job is to help get the keys where they're supposed to go. The keyholes on door B are dopamine receptors. They help bind to dopamine and unlock the next nerve so that the message can be passed on to other parts of the brain or body. So, as you can imagine, in deficiency, you could have the person in room A just not have enough keys. Maybe there are 6 different locks on door B and they only have 4 keys. So that's a dopamine deficiency. You can also have deficiency in There's always something that happens during the video. I don't plan it, I swear I don't. That's low-key, by the way, we're Marvel fans. So the receptors on the door B the keyholes on the door B are the receptors. And you can also have deficiencies in those, not enough. Say maybe you have 5 keyholes, but 3 of them have bubble gum stuffed in them, and so they're not working quite well, and so dopamine can't even be used to activate them appropriately. So those are deficiencies. Either you don't have enough keys or you don't have enough keyholes. That can happen. Dysregulation means you might have the right amounts of everything, but maybe the way they work doesn't necessarily pan out. So the dopamine transporter, for example, maybe that person's asleep. So when dopamine comes out, out to, when the person in room A comes out with the keys to give them to the person in the hallway, they're not even aware or paying attention. Or maybe they're moving a little slower and they're not doing their job appropriately. So you can have dysregulation in the way that the transporter works. And then in hindsight, actually, you can also have dysregulation of the receptors, which would be, in this case, the bubblegum example I gave in earlier, meaning the receptors themselves are not working effectively. So there are two things really impacting the way that dopamine has an effect on our brains. And there are three ways that you can have dysfunction: either deficiency of the dopamine itself, you can have malfunctioning receptors or the keyholes that are on door B, or you can have lazy or non-functioning transporters, as is the case if the person in the hallway falls asleep. And so all of those things come together to create the symptoms that we now call ADHD. And that's important for you to understand that. So I am taking time to explain that, because in the next few videos, I'm going to talk about the different genes, specific genes that we know impact the way that ADHD manifests for each individual, and also the specific genes that we know that our medications for ADHD work on to help treat ADHD. So it's important that you understand this process so that you can better understand what I'm talking about when I later say things like this medication works on this receptor. Now, the interesting thing, very, very important, and part of the reason why I created this channel, is that although the DSM-5 would say that the African American population has less of ADHD, that's actually not true. They actually have higher, and there have been several studies that have shown that they actually have a higher risk of ADHD. The reason for that is because socioeconomic stress, literally being born into a different socioeconomic status, can actually impact the number of dopamine receptors or keyholes that you have on door B. And that sounds like a lot. I'm not gonna flood you with that right in this one video, but we'll talk a little bit more about how the body copes with chronic stress and the ways that it changes the brain and changes the physiology of the body, and how that can manifest in a few different ways. But it's important for you to understand just the basics of those things before we do that. So that is the neurological explanation for ADHD. Obviously, because there are some socioeconomics or social factors that impacts the way that our receptors in our brain works, there's obviously some social behavioral things. There's also some genetic factors that make ADHD be a little bit different between individuals and also increases the risk of ADHD. We'll talk about it. This is the video to at least create the foundation so that when I'm talking to you all in the future, you know what I'm talking about. All right, that's it. Short, sweet, probably the shortest science video you'll ever, no, that's not true. I've seen some shorter ones and they're probably a little bit more cute, but you know, whatever, I did my best. Definitely let me know if you have any questions about this. I know it's an interesting analogy. I did my best. If it doesn't work for you, I'm happy to add clarity in the comments. So see you next Sunday.